growing pressure to answer questions about how Elizabeth Warren proposes to pay for Medicare for all, she has decided to come out with a statement that I think is disastrous. Here it is.
Over the next few weeks, to put out a plan that talks about specifically the cost of Medicare for all and specifically how we pay for it. You know, right now, the cost estimates on Medicare for all vary by trillions and trillions of dollars. And the different revenue streams for how to fund it, there are a lot of them. So this is something I've been working on for months and months, and it's got just a little more work until it's finished.
So there are multiple reasons why I think that this was bad. The optics are bad. You have a candidate who has branded herself as someone who has a plan for everything, and then when it comes to Medicare for all and how to pay for it, there's no plan yet, and that seems problematic. But more importantly, and this is the same issue that she had, in my opinion, when it came to the whole Native American issue, she's allowing dishonest actors to frame the discussion. And so she's caving into pressure, and she appears unprepared. She appears like she doesn't really have this all worked out. Bernie Sanders has his version of Medicare for all. Pramila Jayapal has her version of Medicare for all. They're both very similar, and they both go into detail about how it would be paid for. Bernie Sanders is clear. Yeah, your taxes are gonna go up, including the middle class, but at the end of the day, you're gonna save. No premiums, no deductibles, no co-pays. You don't have to worry about whether or not you gotta buy a separate health insurance, or I should say dental insurance, and then optical insurance, all of that stuff. He's very clear, and even with his framing, it's polling well. Medicare for all is polling well. I don't know why she's like twisting herself up in a pretzel to appease dishonest actors.
Nah, yeah, I don't agree. I think that she's getting a really bad rap on this. So let me explain. First of all, she has had a plan on many of the issues before the other candidates did. Well, but the other candidates didn't receive the same criticism. Hey, Pete Buttigieg, Beto O'Rourke, Amy Klobuchar, why don't you have a plan on that? Why don't you have a plan on that, right? Well, Klobuchar doesn't have a plan on 80% of the issues.
You're right, but she doesn't brand herself as someone who has a plan for that. You get what I'm saying?
No, I understand that, and I understand that when you emphasize something, you put a bullseye on it, and so the political attacks, I'm not surprised by at all, and I understand what you're saying about the bad optics, but Medicare for all is a gigantic issue, and so what did she do in the past? She said in the June debate, quote, "I'm with Bernie on Medicare for all." Now, there's two things about that need to be pointed out. One, a lot of people that support Bernie Sanders are giving her crap over that, and I don't understand that at all. I don't know how much clearer she could have been, and I don't know how much more supportive she could have been of someone she's running against than saying, "I'm with him on it." So like, I think that criticism is totally misplaced.
So let me just jump in on that. The criticism is not because she says she supports Bernie on Medicare for all. It's because she will say that and say unequivocally, I support Medicare for all. And then as we've talked about on the show before, later she'll say, yeah, I like a lot of plans. I support Medicare for all, but there's a lot of plans. There's a lot of ideas out there.
Nah, I think that's also unfair to her. I understand what you're saying, but she says it's a framework, and then people will jump down her throat. What do you mean it's a framework? Well, the reality is, there's only two plans right now in Congress, Sanders' plan and Jayapal's plan. Normally, if you're not running for president, you go, yeah, I like Sanders' plan. Now, does that mean Sanders' plan is going to be passed into law unedited? No. Does that mean that Warren or Klobuchar or any other senator couldn't propose amendments to it? Yes, you could propose amendments, and that's how then you influence that bill under normal circumstances. But we haven't gotten to a point where we're voting on it. So Warren and all the other candidates have not had a chance to weigh in that normal legislative path, right? And so she says, I support the framework of Bernie Sanders' plan. I support Bernie Sanders' plan. Right? Now, she got all this criticism, so saying, well, okay, you gotta come up with your own plan. You gotta come up with your own plan. You have all these other plans, why don't you have a plan for this? So she's like, okay, all right, so it's not good enough that I support Bernie's plan, fine. And it's fair, I am running against them. I'll come up with my own plan. They're like, I want it right now. for Christ's sake. I mean, she came up with 1,000 other ones. And so now you want her to come up with a giant plan for Medicare for all on the spot? No, you do have to be careful and you do have to plan it out. Look, I'm giving you context in that I'm super frustrated with how long Elizabeth Warren is taking on coming out with more campaign finance reform proposals. And I'm also frustrated that Bernie took so long and is still taking long on the specifics. So I get it, I get your frustration on when people don't have specific plans on the issue you most care about. And Medicare for all is gigantic. By the way, so is getting money out of politics. But it does take a while if you're being careful. So I think for her to say, I support Bernie's plan, but now I'll come up with my own and I'll explain to you exactly how I would pay for it, that's a little different than Bernie, is an incredibly reasonable thing to say.
Sure, okay, so I'll wait and see what she's gonna propose and how it's gonna be different from Bernie Sanders' plan. But there's one other component of this that I just wanna quickly mention. Look, when it comes to their supporters, Bernie Sanders versus Elizabeth Warren, there's different demographics there, specifically when it comes to socioeconomic status. Elizabeth Warren's supporters tend to be more affluent. And I bring that up because she is unwilling to admit that she's gonna have to raise taxes on the middle class.
But the middle class is not that affluent. And so if her supporters are affluent and she's still willing to do Medicare for all, she should get more credit, not less credit for that.
Sure, but look, my point is, and we might have a disagreement here, I don't think she's as clear as you think she is, right? That CBS video that we showed, Cenk, it was right after the second to last Democratic debate, and she was asked, about healthcare, what do you support? And she said
there's a couple of different plans, right? And so I get why people are concerned about that. When I first saw it, I was concerned about it. But somebody made a great counterpoint. It was actually one of our viewers. And he said, look, there are a couple of different plans. There's Bernie's plan, there's Jayapal's plan, and she doesn't have her own. So she's saying, I like the Medicare for all plans. She never said, I like the Medicare for all and then some, and the Medicare for some plans, and the Medicare for my cats and dogs, but not for humans plans. She didn't say that. Look, guys, in terms of Medicare for all, there's two candidates that in every debate and in every forum have said unequivocally that they're for it. Bernie Sanders, who wrote the damn bill, and Elizabeth Warren. If you want to say, hey, I like Bernie Sanders more because he wrote the damn bill, et cetera, great, of course, no problem with that at all. That makes perfect sense. But do not put Warren, the only other candidate who has defended it to the hilt, in the same category as all the other establishment Democrats who pretended to be in favor of it and then flip-flopped. They actually flip-flopped, including, by the way, Buttigieg, who now goes around, in my opinion, giving false statements. You want to call it lies, call it whatever you like. He keeps saying, here, I'll give you a quote. He says, right now, whether you copy paste that Bernie Sanders math or do it some other way, there's a hole amounting to trillions of dollars in how this is supposed to work. That's not true. It saves $2 trillion by even the most right-wing analysis of the plan.
Right.
And Buttigieg going around making Koch brother points, making Republican talking points all over television, telling all the Democratic voters, oh, you don't want Medicare for all. That creates this huge hole, trillions of dollars that are unpaid for. Oh, Medicare for all is scary. Let's do something a lot less. Not that much change, just a tiny, tiny amount of change, cosmetic change, so that we don't really fix the system and all my donors are still in charge. So you're gonna take on Buttigieg and all the other ones that are not only opposed to Medicare for all, but help the Republican Party try to torpedo it. That makes sense. To then go after the only other person supporting Medicare for all in this race out of 25 people and say she's not good enough yet because she hasn't done a giant plan immediately, I think is totally unfair. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.